friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Adanna, and on this channel we talk about all things stories and self-care. So books that we love, books that we want to read, authors that we love, and self-care. If you're interested in that sort of content and you haven't subscribed already, definitely subscribe down below and also hit the notification bell so that you're notified of every single time that I upload. I am super excited about today's video because it's a topic that I've kind of been thinking about as we're wrapping up 2021, and it's all of the books that I have started in terms of a series, but haven't gotten to finish them quite yet. I really do want to see if I can push myself to finish these series before the end of 2021. I also thought about this as I was finishing up reading the 5th season by Jemisin. And of course, that is the first book in her trilogy from The Broken Earth. I know this book is already like almost 500 pages, but if there's any way that I can finish the other two, which are probably also close to 500 pages, that would just give me so much peace. So in no particular order, I mentioned Jemisin. She is one of my favorite science fiction fantasy writers, and I actually tried to read one of her books earlier this year, The City We Became, but I just couldn't get into it. And I think that's because I wasn't really familiar with her writing style. People have recommended the Broken Earth trilogy, specifically the 5th season, and they were right. It is definitely the book that you should read first from Jemisin, and then read some of her other books. I read it, and it is hard to talk about or summarize the story without spoiling it. So what I'll essentially say is, think of like a climate change-esque story where you have a new world after some some event that has basically made the world either uninhabitable or very hard to live on this new earth. It is a book that is very much steeped in world building. So we're reimagining the world where there are intense tsunamis, intense earthquakes, intense climate events. And people that have been fortunate enough to survive and move through generations have to kind of always be wondering about that 5th season. So you have your spring, summer, fall, winter. The 5th season is kind of like, you don't necessarily know what to expect. And so you have to figure out how to survive in that particular environment. That's all I'm going to say about this particular book. But the way the author left it off was very much a point where we gotten some character development from some of the characters. We've also gotten some of this world building, and we're able to potentially in the 2nd and 3rd book of this trilogy have enough material potentially for the author to dive even deeper into the story of those characters. So I'm really super excited about reading the next 2 books in that series. The 2nd book being The Obelisk Gate, and the 3rd being The Stone Sky. The next book that I am super excited about reading is the 2nd book within the Raybear series. So I read Raybear number 1 earlier this year. I believe it was in June or July, maybe June or July. And I loved it. What this book essentially is about is Teresa, who's a young girl who has basically grown up in isolation. She has a talent that is unknown to her. Her mother has a history that we don't find out until later on in the story. And her mother kind of treats Teresa as kind of like an experiment. She wants to use Teresa as a revenge in order to get back at people in her own mother's past. So she grew up in isolation. She doesn't necessarily have siblings or neighborhood friends to play with. After a certain point, Teresa gets the opportunity to join the Prince's Council, which the Prince's Council is a group of 12, including the prince, people who rule the kingdom. They all bring their special talents and gifts. There are some that are great at tilling the earth and bringing harvest. There are some that are great warriors. There are some that are great peacemakers, rulers, and so that sort of thing. And so she wants to be a part of these 12 to rule the kingdom. It is an opportunity for her to have that closeness and that bond with people that she enjoys and enjoys being in their company. And that's something that she's never actually had the opportunity to do. However, her mom wants to use Teresa as sort of a weapon, like I mentioned. That we're seeing that how Teresa has to basically say, do I please my mom, or do I say do what my mom wants me to do, or do I do what would be pleasing for me? And it was great how the author wrote that story and essentially gave us another opportunity to dive deeper. The next book that I read that is a part of a series is Truly Devious by Maureen Brown. Now, this is the first in a 4-book series, and Stevie Bell is a student at Ellingham Academy, and Ellingham Academy is a school that only accepts the brightest. So inventors, artists, actors, writers, novelists, any sort of very special talent affords you the opportunity to go to Ellingham Academy. However, Ellingham Academy has a sort of twisted past in that there was a murder that happened there decades ago. So Stevie Bell doesn't really have a conventional talent. Her talent is she loves to solve crime, and she is a true crime aficionado. She is granted the opportunity to come to Ellingham Academy, and she decides to make it her mission to be able to solve the mystery that happened however many decades ago. What she doesn't know, and unbeknownst to some of the other characters, is that there's actually a second mystery that needs to be solved that actually intertwined with the first mystery that happened decades ago. And it is very interesting to see how Stevie is able to solve that mystery or use the clues from one mystery to solve the other mystery. I really enjoyed it. I thought this was a very light read. It's very much in that Agatha Christie, like whodunit sort of style of writing. And it was again, one of those not super intimidating reads. I believe it's only about 300 pages, but it left you feeling like, oh, I would love to see and hear and understand what happens next. The next 3 books in that series are The Vanishing Stair, The Hand on the Wall. Like I said, I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to get through all 3 of these books before the end of the year, but I'm definitely going to try. All right. And so the last series that I would love to complete this year, I actually think this one might be more feasible just because there's only 1 more book, but that would be the Xenogenesis series by Octavia Butler. There are 3 books in this series: Dawn, Adulthood Rights, and Imago. And I read the first 2 earlier this year. Dawn starts off where there is a woman named Lilith who awakens and finds herself on a ship. This is a ship that is actually in space. So she finds herself, she doesn't know how she got on this ship. She doesn't know who else is on this ship. She just finds herself in a small room and kind of just like, what is going on? We find out that she has actually been saved. Her and a couple other humans have been saved from Earth by I don't know what exactly to call them, but I'll just call them an alien species. And the goal of this species is to mate with humans and create a new species. At first, Lilith is like, no, I'm not into it. Get me off this ship. But we actually, see her come to realize, if I don't do this, one, I don't really have a choice, but if I don't, then the human race will not be able to survive. And so she agrees to do this, and we end up ending Dawn with her having agreed to do this. We then move into Adulthood Rights, which is essentially, since that offspring of Lilith has been born and has had a couple years to survive, we now follow that offspring's journey, I guess, or story. I cannot remember right now what her son's name is, but we are following him, that son. And it is very interesting to see how he is struggling with not being quite human, but also not being quite of that alien species race. We see that battle that he's constantly facing, learning new things about himself, learning new things that are not even known between the 2 species, that he can do certain things that humans can do. He can't do certain things that humans can do, and vice versa with aliens. And so it is really actually interesting to see his particular story. So the 3rd book in this series would be Imago, which I'm not even sure exactly what it all entails, but I know that it will be a continuation of Lilith and her offspring. And I'm really excited to see how Octavia Butler wraps up this story, how she wraps up this world that has been created, or these new species that have been created. And yeah, I'm really excited to see how this particular story comes on it. All right. And so that is it. Those are all of the books that I would love to, if I can, get to before the end of the year. This will probably be a challenge because I think there are there are 7 books that I would have to get through. And as of today, we are kind of mid-November. So that's 7 books in about 6 weeks. I don't know how feasible that is because there are also other books that I would love to read that I actually have started reading and I'm in the middle of. So I got to finish those first. But if there was ever going to be like a TBR of like what I plan to read for the rest of the year, those 7 books would be essentially on it. So let me know. Have you read any of these books, either individually or read the complete series? Let me know. Would you recommend that I finish some series? Because there are some books that you're like, you know what, just stop at the first one. The other 2 or the other 3 are not worth your time. Or are there any books in this series that you think like definitely read the whole entire series? Everything will make sense once you finish it. I'm so curious to know what you guys have read and if you would recommend that I continue reading any of these. But other than that is today's video. I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, definitely give it a thumbs up. And also, again, subscribe if you haven't. I would love to put this channel in front of more viewers like yourself, those who love reading books from women of color authors, from indigenous authors, from Asian authors, from the whole gamut. I love reading diverse stories, and potentially you or someone that's like you may enjoy reading those type of stories as well. And so giving it a thumbs up definitely somehow pleases the YouTube algorithm gods and puts this channel in front of more people like yourself. So I would love for your support in helping to further that mission. Otherwise, I will see you guys next time. Bye.